The next up is Scorned by Jason Spyda Adams. This kit's no longer available. When I first learned about Jason Spyda Adams, it was about 8, maybe 9 years ago. Jumped on his website, bought a number of kits, really wanted this one. Unfortunately, it was already been sold out by the time I jumped on there. So it was a limited run. And so I kept my eyes open, and when it became available on eBay about a year ago, I jumped on it and purchased it. Um, the kit is like any garage kit, has a limited number of pieces that are involved. Like any garage kit, there may be issues with the molding process, such as fitting issues between the parts. Sometimes parts get warped. Sometimes also the details are not as sharp as they would have been if it was done earlier in the molding process. Another challenge is you might have air pockets within the resin that come through to the surface, and they also have to be filled in and addressed. So taking a look at this particular piece, I found that all the parts seem to be pretty sharp in terms of the molding. So that's good. I don't have to address something like that. However, the previous owner had some issues where parts had broken off, like the arm had broken off, and it looks like couple of pieces broke off on the dress, the rear dress area of the figure, that will also have to be addressed. Um, the model, I think I might have mentioned it, but if I didn't, it's molded in poly stone resin. So it's a really heavy and fragile resin. I don't particularly like working on these type of models when they're in polystone because of the fact that it doesn't take much. You just have to drop it the wrong way and it'll just shatter. So probably as I'm working on this, I'm going to be using a towel underneath it to try and lessen the amount of damage that could potentially happen as I'm either painting or handling the model kit. So in a minute, I'll go over some of the issues with the parts that I've noticed, and I'll also go over the parts themselves, so it gives you an idea of what's involved with this kit. If you don't have it and you want to get it, do like I did, just pay attention to like eBay or some other secondary site that sells used models. Purchase it that way. If you have it in your stash, I recommend pulling it out and start working on it. So we'll be back in a second and take a look at the parts. The model consists of 4 parts. We have the figure, the base, the cross that goes on the base, it's supposed to be a stone cross, and then the back of the dress for the figure. So to put it together, it's real simple. Insert the figure's feet into the base, and then you put the back of the dress there. That helps prop up the figure in the base. So it looks like this. And then the cross goes into the front right here. So as I mentioned, I bought this off of eBay. So the previous owner had a problem with the arm. It broke off. I used CA glue to put it back on. I'm still going to have to address this. I'm not sure if I really like how that was addressed with just the CA glue. May end up having to add a little bit of putty in there to help smooth it out. Speaking of putty, air pockets came in when this was molded. As you can see, there's holes in the back of the dress here. It seemed like there were a couple holes in the figure, and there's a couple holes in the base that will have to be addressed. The cross appears to be in pretty good shape. Yeah, looks like it's in pretty good shape. Not too sure if I like the idea of it being smooth like that at the top, especially when the other corners are rough. So I might add some putty on the top here and fix that smooth area. You can see the idea that Jason had with this figure. So as you're approaching the figure, she looks like a beautiful woman. And as you can see, the side is still beautiful. And then we start turning into the zombie aspect of the figure. Pretty good concept, actually. Um, so in terms of painting, I'll have to make sure that the face, arms, and back side of the figure appear to be normal. Until we get to the zombie area, we have probably like some sort of decayed flesh, something like that going on here, as well as the legs. Of course, the dress itself hides the legs. Now, in terms of fixing some of the parts, I mentioned the arm. That'll need to be addressed. This dress, back part of the dress, is also going to have to be addressed. So that part chipped off. This part has chipped off, and this part is chipped off, and a little bit of chipping going on here too. Not too sure if that was intentional with this little hole here, but I'm probably going to fill that in. Yeah, it's basically this and the arm appear to be the only damaged areas I will have to fix. The rest of it should be in pretty good shape. Now you can see the previous owner had sanded along here where the two pieces of the mold met. It looks like it's down further this way. And it seemed like there was also on the other side too. Yeah, right here. So I'm going to take a look at that and see if I can't do something a little bit better than what was done previously. Maybe use some putty or something like that to help give some more of the definition to the figure. Fill in some of the areas that might have been missed by the previous owner. Could have been done a little bit better. So when I come back, my plan is to show you the changes or the fixing I've done on the figure as well as the dress. And the base, well, the base itself just has a couple of small areas that need to be addressed. So we'll be back in a second. So I did some repairs on the pieces, starting with the cross. I used some epoxy sculpt on the top here, roughed it up so it matches the rest of the cross. On the base here, I added a brass rod. That way the cross is removable. So I just put the cross onto the brass rod, and I can remove it when it's time to pack it up and transport it someplace. The dress, this piece had broken off, that piece had broken off, and along the side here, there were chunks that were also broken off. So I ended up using 3D printer resin, formed it up on the top and the sides, filed, sanded, and to the point where it matches where it's supposed to go. And then I use some CA glue on the top and on the underside just to make sure that this is permanently attached to the piece. As far as the figure is concerned, what I ended up doing was addressing a lot of the holes that were in here. That was caused by the resin curing with some air bubbles coming through. So there were a lot of pockets that showed up, and so I used perfect plastic putty to address that. I also did the same thing with the dress here. So for next steps, I'm going to need to clean all these parts, remove all the dust, and then I'm going to use some black primer and prime all these pieces. So I primed all the parts using the Army Painter primer, matte black. And where I'm at right now is I applied a zenithal highlight on the figure. And the highlight I used was the Vallejo white paint. So now that this is drying, I am then going to address the skin first. Start on the back side where the skin is going to be normal until we reach her face. And then from there, we'll start addressing all the decayed parts on the body, including the arms and the legs. It looks like, based on the sculpt, the legs are all decayed from where the shoes are all the way up through to where the dress starts. Of course, we'll have to dress it in the back too. With the highlight, the part that we don't see, the dress part that we don't see in the back, is dark. It's black still, so it's going to be dark back there, even with whatever I end up painting the dress color with. So that's where we stand right now. I'll come back talking about the skin when I get that ready to go. I started painting the figure. So for the dress, I ended up covering with this yellow masking tape. And for areas that I couldn't get the masking tape to, like for example, the figure's torn sleeve here and the figure's shoes, I ended up using this liquid latex. Dries clear, goes on really thick, but it works really well in terms of masking material. So the first thing that I did was on all the white areas, I ended up using this violet red. And then all the black areas, like on the back of the figure's legs and on the underside where it's black, I use the transparent red. So next I'm going to start adding skin tones to the figure's face here and along the back and shoulder blades. So it's going to be a combination of some orchis dermis, as well as some basic skin tone, and a little bit of medium flesh tone. So when I come back, I'll show you what the figure's skin looks like now that it's painted. And one other thing I want to mention is every area that's currently where the flesh has come off the figure, I plan on masking here because I just want to keep this reddish colors protected from any sort of painting I might do on the figure's shoulders and arms. So that I can apply whatever colors I want to apply for the missing skin or the decaying skin on this figure. I have all of the masking material removed, and I have painted her face and backside with some flesh tones. May need a little bit more work on that, but the next step is to address the decayed flesh. So one of the reasons why I wanted to remove the masking material was to get to that. As you can see, it's a lot of areas that need to be addressed, such as the legs, the hands, the wrists, the arms, as well as the face and front side. So when I come back, I'll be showing what I did to address those areas. Start cleaning up the figure. Some of the violet red got onto the clothes, and a little bit of the red also got onto the underside on the clothes. Clean that up, and then I started painting the figure's face and wrist. So I used some drake tooth paint for the face, the cheekbone, the teeth, and it looked like there was a wrist bone sticking out here too. So I've never painted decayed flesh before. I watched a few videos and I decided I'm going to try an experiment using the Tim Gore Bloodline paints. And I've used this stuff in the past. It works pretty well. So I was thinking, I might start off with some umber and some decay. These are pretty dark colors, so that might get into the dark areas. And I'm going to do it as a wash into those areas. And then maybe a little bit of tan on top of that, some vial green possibly in some areas. And then for some of the red, I was thinking of using the crimson. So again, I'm just going to try washes and see how this turns out. So when I come back, I'll give you an update on where I stand on this. Maybe it's going to work, maybe it won't. Find out. But I'm kind of looking forward to seeing how it turns out. So I might uh, certainly might start in the leg area first to see if that turned out the way I expected. So I'll be back in a little bit. This is where we stand after working on the face, the breasts, the arms, hands, and legs. So what I ended up doing was I first made a wash of the Tim Gore's Bloodline Decay color. Wash that into all the crevices. Then after that, I then applied some highlights using the pink color and a little bit of the vial green as well. And once that was dried, I then applied the crimson color on top to give it this reddish color. Now the teeth and the facial bone, what I ended up doing was using the drake tooth, as I mentioned earlier, and then use the pallid bone to make it look a lot more aged. Now, I'm not too sure if I really like this color combination just yet. I may end up revisiting it down the road. But what I was after was trying to make it look like that she was coming out of the grave recently, and her skin, at least on one side, has started falling off. Trying to get that reddish color that we find underneath the skin, and trying to make it a little bit darker, looking like it's decaying. So I think I achieved some of that. So as the character is coming around the corner and he sees a beautiful girl, it's not until he gets and faces her that he finds out that she's a zombie. So I might end up liking this a little bit better once I get the eyes in and address the eyebrow on the face and her lips. I also noticed that sculpted in is her fingernails, and I may end up painting the fingernails as well. I haven't decided what color just yet to make it sort of stand out, um, but that may help a little bit too, and a little bit of contrast. So yeah, I think once I get the eyes in, I'll probably like it a little bit better. At this point, you know, it probably it's probably pretty close to what it might look like if she was coming out of the grave. So I think once I get the eyes taken care of, the eyebrow, and even her hair. It's also on the front I notice it's sculpted in. Once I can get the hair taken care of, maybe I'll start liking it a little bit better. I don't know. I mean, you can always add more red to it, I suppose, um, and have the option of adding some brown. But this is where we stand right now. So when I come back, I'll show you what I've done with the face and the hair. So I finally got the face taken care of. I haven't painted in the eyes just yet. I haven't quite made up my mind what color I want to go for the eyes. Got her hair taken care of, and her dress, and her shoes. So what I used for the shoes was the Vallejo off-white. I didn't want to make it pure white, but off-white seemed to be about right. For the dress, I used some paint that's unfortunately no longer available, and that's the Garage Kits linen. I wanted to go with a sort of a more off-white color for the dress. My plan is to apply pastels to the folds, to the dress, probably use some sort of brown pastels on the dress to make, and the shoes as well, to make it look like she was climbing out of a grave. Obviously, I haven't painted in the eyes just yet. I haven't quite made up my mind what color I want the eyes to be. And the back here, where the I guess it must be string or some, or yeah, it's got to be some sort of string that ties together the back of the dress. I use the off white for that too. Um, I also applied a lot more red to various areas where I wanted to make it much redder, um, like on the um, underneath her neck area. I'm a lot more satisfied with it now. Now that I got the hair on, now that I got the dress colors in place, much more satisfied with the face than I was before. I wasn't 100% bought on the idea that I liked the color combinations, but I like it a lot better now. So I'm going to stick with this. So the next step I'm going to do is flat coat everything before I start applying the pastels to the figure. I want to lock in all these colors. That way, once I lock it in, I start using the pastels on the folds of the dress, then on the figure. If I make a mistake and don't like how it came out, I can always just remove it. Fairly easy because it's just pastels. And once I'm satisfied with it, then I'll just lock it in place with another flat coat. I'm holding off the eyes right now because I'm not too sure what I want to do with the eyes, as I stated before. I might end up painting them in, or I might use some decals for the eyes. But the eye is, I really like the eyes now. They really came out well. So that's where we stand right now till my next update. Started work on the base. So on the base itself, where the dirt is, I end up using a cocoa brown. Wanted to get a really dark brown there. This is probably going to be the base coat. And for the cross and the cross stand, I started using this medium gray from Tamiya. So now what I'm doing is I'm starting on the cross itself. And I'm just adding some black wash, get it into all the cracks and crevices, and just take a little bit of it back, just to make it dark in these cracks and crevices. So starting off with a lighter gray seems to be the way to go. So I plan, after this dries, I plan on then dry brushing the medium gray back on and seeing how that looks. So as I try to get as much as I can in there, again, I'm trying to just get in the cracks and crevices, and then just take a Q-tip and just take off some of this. Just sitting there because I really want it to be darkening up the cracks and crevices. As you can see, it's taken a little while for it to dry. So this is the top where I had fixed it. It was originally filed down smooth, and ended up applying some epoxy sculpt to that just to make it look a little bit rougher, match the rest of the cross. So let's see, get in here and here as well. Again, just trying to get it darkened. Just take it back with this Q-tip. And yeah, yeah, it's getting right in there. I might as well do the underside too, even though you're not going to see that once it's attached to the base, but what the heck, just make it consistent. And I'll get to the other side here, do the exact same thing. Cracks and crevices, take it off. And the good thing, that I find when I do this, don't try to make it consistent either. You can see it's a little bit darker here, a little bit lighter on the back here. Pretty much like what you see with stone. It's there's never a consistent color on a rock or a stone or even a cross that's been out in the cemetery a long time. They're never consistent with colors. Of course, it happens where you got a lot of weathering going on. So at this point, we have this pretty much done. Let me take a little bit off here. I think it's gonna. Yep. I'll let this dry for a bit and just address the base here and do the exact same thing. Thing I like about a black wash like this is it really gets into all the areas, so you don't have to do a lot of work. Yeah, I'm not too sure if I'm going to dry brush this. I may end up using a black wash on here. Put a little bit more on just to darken it up. But I'm going to hold off on doing that just yet until I decide if that's the approach I want to take. So, yeah, give this a couple of minutes to dry up, and maybe I'll apply a little bit of a. It's still not dark enough. Like I said, I might end up applying, or I will be applying the Tamiya medium gray back on, just dry brushing it on. But yeah, there we go. I think that's looks okay. Yeah, looks like a cross that's been out there for a while, getting weathered, getting rained on. Yeah, even underside here. Thinking also the other thing I might end up doing is applying some moss on the cross. Of course, for anybody who lives up here in the Northeast knows moss grows on the north side and not on the south side. So, yeah, there we go. Yeah, give it a little while to dry, and it's already still tacky. Yeah, where I touched it, a little bit's coming off. That was my fault. There we go. Probably should have done this in stages, but yeah. All right. So when I come back, I will have applied the dry brush onto the cross and the cross base, and then start thinking about what I'm going to do for the cemetery dirt. I let the cross and the cross base dry for a little bit. Looks nice and dark, so I am going to dry brush some of this Tamiya gray, medium gray, back onto the cross and the base. So I'll start with the cross and see how that's looking. Yeah, it's definitely highlighting. These areas, making it look much nicer. Yeah, definitely starting to look like a cross that's been out there for a little while. A little bit of weathering going on. A little bit of aging too. All right, let's do the other side. There we we go. Yeah, I find when I dry brush, not using a lot of paint, and it goes a long, long ways. The other thing, of course, you want to make sure that you're brushing it in the same direction too, to try and prevent any sort of brush strokes appearing. Yeah, definitely looks like an aged cross. A little bit on the top here, a little bit more. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. When you think about it, terms of weathering, um, most of it's probably going to come from the top area and not the bottom area. Let's do the base. Yeah, you don't really need a lot. I just want to add a little bit more here. Yeah, I think the good decision was to go with the medium gray rather than a dark gray or to me a light gray. I think if I went with a light gray, it would be just way too dark. Now this looks like now this is definitely looking like a cross that I've seen in cemeteries up here. Like some of the gravestones I've seen at the North Church in Boston. They've been out there and aging for a couple hundred years. Definitely, definitely looking like it should. And you know, the thing about the dry brushing, it doesn't have to be like consistent either, because stones aren't going to be consistently weathered. So it definitely looks like it's been out there for a while. Yeah, that dry brushing really takes out or brings out really brings out, makes it look like it's been weathered. Definitely looks good. All right, so I got to let this dry for a while. And then the next step, I think, is apply a flat coat onto this just to lock everything in place before I start using anything that I may want to remove down the road. So I'm thinking the next step might be applying this faded moss green pigments onto the cross and maybe the base. See how that goes, but I got to flat coat that before I do that, just to lock these colors in place. So I'm going to give this a little bit of time to dry before I do a flat coat. So I'll be back in a couple of minutes here. Well, a couple of seconds for you, a couple of minutes for me. So I've been applying pastels to the figure. And one thing I like about pastels is that it gives you a lot of control on applying shading and things like that. So it's a really good uh, thing to have in your toolkit. And so what I've been doing is I've been applying different shades of gray to the folds of her dress. I want to give the idea that this wedding dress that she has on, but she's just come out of the grave, about ready to go for her first snack as a zombie. So in the folds, I applied a lot of different shades of gray, keeping it to the darker angle. And then on the dress, the back here, her shoes, and in different parts of the dress, I've been applying this pigment for graveyard dirt. And Thing I like about this is it's not overwhelming when I apply it onto her shoes. So I put it on different spots of her shoes. I don't want the shoes to be totally, you know, brown with the graveyard dirt because it's supposed to be, wedding shoes that she's supposed to have on, I guess. So I did it on the back of her dress as well as the inside. The inside you're not really going to see. You just see the outside once I have it attached to the model. So I applied it in all sorts of different areas. I really wanted to make it look dirty, but not overwhelmingly dirty. And one thing I like about pastels, not only does it give me control, but it's easy to take off. You just use a cotton swab and you just rub it off. I'll even use a wet cotton swab just to take off some of the some of the highlights where the pastel might have fallen. And basically, at this point, I think I have her pretty much done. One thing, one thing is always easy to add on. You just keep on adding on. Like, oh, I think I should need it up here, make it a little bit dirtier, things like that. But one thing I like with these pastels is it gives me that control where I can stop and take a look at what I accomplished. So that's where we stand right now. Um, the next step is almost finishing it up. I got to flat coat this to lock the pastels into place. And then I'm going to finish up her eyes. And I think it'll pretty much be done at this point. So I'll be back in a second and we'll see where she stands. Figure is done. I got her eyes in place. I end up using decals for her eyes. Challenge I had was with the left eye. So because it's a complete ball, trying to get it so that it looks a little off-centered was a little bit of a challenge. I think I got it about right. I never like to have figures' eyes looking straight on. I like to have them looking either to the side, either the left side or right side, as if they're looking at something. So I think as the figure is being turned around, it feels a little bit more natural, like she's looking at you as you're approaching and going around her until you see that she's actually a zombie. So that's it for this figure. Come back in a second. I'll show some pictures of her to give you an idea how this model turned out. So that's Scorned, sculpted by Jason Spyda Adams, a 1/8 figure model kit. Uh, Overall, I enjoyed this model. There were a few problems I had to overcome. Previous owner had already started work on this, so there were follow marks on the cross that needed to be fixed, as well as the figure. And there were a couple of pieces that were broken off on the dress. Again, I had to fix those. I've never worked on a zombie before, so I'm not too sure if the colors I chose for the zombie are right or wrong. The approach I took was this is a figure where her skin had already started peeling off or coming off at different areas, so it's exposing the tendons and the bones underneath her skull, her chest, and her leg area. So I went with a much more brownish, reddish color. Um, Considering the backside of her body is skin, and it's still fleshy skin. I didn't want to make it look too much like it's decaying. Um, I could see going with a much more of a greenish, ghoulish color, maybe. Um, but I kind of like the way that this came out. And, considering her backstory is, I think, a bride that died and got buried in her wedding dress, going with the wedding dress approach, I kind of like how that came out. Um, and, overall, I thought the model was really easy to work on once I overcame the issues that I encountered. Painting was how, the painting just came out the way I liked it, really indicating that this is a figure that's coming out of the grave and is about ready to grab her first victim as a zombie. So if you have this in your stash, I recommend pulling out, working on it. Unfortunately, it's no longer available. It's completely out of production. I think it was produced about 10 years ago. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was about 10 years ago. So at this point, the only way you can acquire this figure is if it becomes available on the secondary market. I got lucky. It came up on eBay, and I jumped on it immediately. Otherwise, I still would not have had this figure. So until we meet next time, be safe, and looking forward to presenting my next video.
It's alive! Oh, it's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!